It's ratings day and AEW pulled off the impossible because they broke, finally, 700,000 viewers. Oh my god, it's the end of the world. Wow. But we'll get into that shortly. We've also got ratings for NXT and some news on Warner Brothers Discovery that doesn't look good for AEW. No Collision ratings this week. That was just a one-off for last week. Now, before we get into that, timestamps, as you know, you need to get into story time. It's story time. In this edition of Story Time, I was outside yesterday and I was cutting the grass because I'd left it for so fucking long. It was taller than my fence. So I went out there and I spent about 3 hours out there cutting that grass, right? And that's why there's no video yesterday. I was fucked because of how hot it was. And I found some things whilst I was cutting the grass. Take a look at this. We've got a huge ant's nest. I don't know if you can see them, but they are fucking everywhere. Holy shit. Yes, I've got an ant's nest in my garden, but not only one ant's nest. I counted 7 ants' nests out in my front garden. 7. Please let me know how I can get rid of that many ants, because there's fucking loads of them. 7. It was, and I stood in 2 of them. I'm surprised that they didn't crawl up my leg and piss on me or bite me or whatever they do. But that's the end of story time. Not much to talk about there. But NXT, we'll start with NXT. 610,000 viewers for NXT. And personally, this is a bad number. Again, I had people in my comments last week. Oh, you basically said the same things I said in the video. Right? I said all these things. I said that they've got no stars. I said that they're developmental. Okay? I said all those things within the video, which people then commented and told me, even though I'd already said them. Okay? Now, again, NXT needs to be healthy in the 700s. That is good for NXT. Considering it's developmental, no stars, 700s is good for NXT. The 6s, not so much. While it isn't nothing to worry about for NXT, it still needs to be more than what it is now. And the way that... and I'm saying this because when you get NXT guys, apart from the rare occasion that move up to Raw or SmackDown, it is fucking crickets. And you've seen it. I've seen it. And we need to get to that point where it isn't crickets anymore. When we get a call up. Because you remember back in the day, when Enzo and Cass debuted, fucking huge pop. Shinsuke, huge pop. Bobby Roode. Everybody that came up from NXT got a huge fucking pop. Okay? And that's what we need to be back. That's what made NXT feel so special. And while you can't recreate what NXT was now, what it used to be, sorry, you can still make it into something better so it can feel special again, if you know what I'm saying. And it doesn't feel must-see. It doesn't. And that's why I don't bother to watch it every week. I don't bother to watch it at all, to be honest. But more people, they should get more people to watch NXT. Best way to do this, promote NXT on Raw and on SmackDown, more specifically on Raw, because SmackDown is free TV for you guys in America, I believe. And Raw is not. Raw's on the same network as NXT. So you need to try and transition some of those Raw viewers and send them over to NXT. That's what you need to do for NXT to get a bigger number, because 610, It doesn't work for me, brother. Doesn't work for me. Again, it's nothing to worry about, but needs to be higher. Next, Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, if you have followed the movie making industry and you've seen the films that they've put out, Warner Brothers, and you've seen how much they've fucking flopped, then you would know that Warner Brothers Discovery has been in some deep trouble for a very long time. And wrestling fans don't seem to know this. Wrestling fans seem to think AEW is going to get this big money deal. Big money deal. Even though Warner Brothers Discovery hemorrhages money every year. Okay? Now, Warner Brothers have laid off 1,000 people for budget cuts. They've laid off 1,000 people so they can not lose as much money. And according to Dave Meltzer, according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Warner Bros. Discovery have laid off the 1,000 people so they can get $1.8 billion for the NBA. I'm Ollie Davis. Yeah, that's what Dave's saying. And I don't see any reason for him to be lying about that, to be honest. It isn't a beneficial thing to AEW. I mean, he didn't say something that's beneficial towards AEW, so I don't see why that would be a lie here. Now, Dave loves to lie when it benefits AEW, but sometimes he can be honest, and sometimes he can say what Tony doesn't want him to say, right? And Warner Brothers Discovery laying off 1,000 people certainly isn't a good look. Tony Khan's not going to get that big deal he wants. That's why he's never specific about anything. Anytime he gets interviewed about it, oh, we're having great conversations, it's going to be a great summer for AEW, we're having great matches, and completely changes the subject by talking about the matches and the pay-per-views and all that stuff, when the original question was about the TV deal. Because that's what Tony does. And because Tony does that, and because Warner Brothers Discovery is in the shit anyway, it isn't looking good for a TV deal. I'm starting to think, right, and I've been saying for a while, that AEW will be renewed by WBD, just not for the money they want. I have a feeling AEW is going to move. I'm starting to think AEW is going to change their network and change where their programming is aired from. It might not be a thing where Warner Bros. Are saying, we don't want you anymore, but I think it's going to be a thing where Tony says, this isn't enough money, we're going to have to move. And if that happens, what happens to the TNT Championship and the TBS Championship? What happens to those? Are you going to rename them? If I was you, I'd just get rid of them. You don't need them because you've got a mid-card championship in the International Championship, it's called. I keep going to call it the All-Atlantic, but that was its previous name. You've got that championship being held by main eventers, and it's taking more priority over the World Championship. So keep that. Get rid of the belt Okada's got. Get rid of the belt that Jack Perry's got. Get rid of the women's mid-card belt. Don't need it. And there we go. You've lost lots of belts. Everybody's happy. No more stupid championships. And no more Warner Brothers Discovery for AEW. But I don't think AEW would do that. I think they'd just rename the belts and probably introduce more championships while they're at it. Because it's all great. And finally, AEW Dynamite. It's time to talk about their ratings. And their ratings. 795,000 viewers. Now, this is up, I believe, a little over 100,000 from last week. Which is good. But it ain't a win. And it ain't a win because this time last year, this number was seen as fucking awful. Okay? We can't forget that. Just because it's a big increase doesn't mean it's good. Because it isn't. It isn't good. Alright? Dynamite isn't NXT. NXT doesn't have any stars, any names whatsoever. Okay? They've got Trick Williams, who some people know him in the mainstream wrestling audience for Whoop That Trick, and that's literally it. And that's it. That's it for NXT. I mean, Sean Spears isn't a star. Neither's Ethan Page. Even though I like Ethan Page, but he isn't a big name. These guys aren't big names. In AEW, you've got Jon Moxley. You've got Kenny Omega. You've got Chris Jericho. Will Ospreay. MJF. Adam Copeland, not Edge. Mercedes Moné. Who else is there? FTR. You've got all these fucking names, right? And I'm probably forgetting someone and I'm going to kick myself later. You've got all these names and you just can't make it to where you was this time last year. And for all the people that are going to say that, oh, WWE's ratings are down from 5 years ago. Okay, cool, but that is the fault of the previous administration, not the current one. Because Vince saw the decline in everything, and he didn't care. Just like Tony Khan doesn't really care. He only acts like he does to try and get back at us. He does it out of spite, rather than, for his business. But when the previous administration were in charge, with Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn, everything was going down, year by year, down. Now that Triple H is in charge, ticket sales are through the fucking roof, and ratings, they're not going down, but they are consistent, and they've been consistent for 2 years. Raw gets an average of 1.8 to 1.6. When the NFL is on, they get about 1.5 to 1.3. SmackDown usually gets 2.1 to 2.3. When they're on FS1, that number does drop considerably to sometimes less than 1 million, I've seen. But that's because a big change changes channels, so on and so on. Plus, when SmackDown airs in, say, the UK, people watch it via Watch Wrestling, some dodgy website, and that takes a lot of the viewership away. So, Dynamite needs to increase to a level where I can't take the piss out of it. If they get back to 850, if Dynamite get back to 850, I will say that's good for them. Even though it's not really an amazing number, it would be back on track to where they used to be. But 795 for this 1 week, will they do it again next week? I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so is because what they tuned in for, MJF versus Ospreay, went for a fucking hour. Nobody wants to sit and watch one wrestling match that lasts an hour. An hour. Who wants to sit and watch that? Not me. Right? After 15 minutes, I'm thinking, right, when's this match going to come to its conclusion? After 15 minutes. Okay? A good wrestling match, a good match, timing-wise, 20 minutes. 20 minutes, 25 at a push. 1 hour? Nah, that doesn't work for me, brother. That ain't for me. And I don't think it's for a lot of other people either. You never know, due to the result of the match with MJF becoming the new international champion, That might get some people to come back the following week. However, they've somewhat killed their pay-per-view. Why would you do this before the pay-per-view? Is Ospreay going to win it back at Wembley? Or are they even going to continue this? Or are they going to have MJF versus Daniel Garcia for the International Championship and have Will Ospreay do something completely different? I think that's probably what they're going to fucking do. Honestly, I don't get how Tony Khan thinks. Why would you not have Ospreay win a championship at Wembley? It should have been the World Championship, but that's not going to happen now. The Swerve's facing, I think, Danielson. Ospreay's nowhere near it. So, yeah, man, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I was going to say thinks. Let me know what you thinks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. NXT ratings, and I'm going to get a couple of people saying to me, but Crossman, all the things you just said, I'm about to say to you now. I've already said them. I know. I just want NXT to be up a bit. I want them to grow. Alright, that's not a crime. I want NXT to grow. Warner Brothers Discovery, what do you think about their decline in money? Because they're in such a shit fucking state right now. Especially if you've been following the box office over the last couple of years, you'd know the shit that they're in. Okay? And finally, what do you think the Dynamite rating this week? Do you think it will be an increase again next week? Or do you believe that they will drop back to not the sevens, the sixes, or maybe even the fives? Like, subscribe, follow me on X at Crossman25. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.